is Gemma. Welcome back to another video, and we have Rudy. And today I am going to be talking to you about anticipated releases for the rest of 2021. So there are 10 books that I want to talk to you about today that come out between the beginning of September and the end of November. If there's anything that you think I'm missing, then let me know. I haven't included any from December just because I couldn't find any that I thought were particularly interesting. Obviously, if you know of any, then let me know. But yeah, let's kick off with books that are going to be released in September. So the first one that I want to talk to you about is Snow Country by Sebastian Faulks, which will be released on the 2nd of September. Sebastian Faulks is the author of Birdsong, which I read last year. Absolutely loved it, gave it 5 stars. Highly recommend to anyone who enjoys very well written historical fiction, and also if you're interested in World War I fiction, which you don't see that much of really. So Snow Country takes place from sort of the endish of the First World War through to just before the Second World War starts, and you follow 3 characters. So you have what I assume is the main character, Anton, who's a journalist, and you start with him sort of around World War I, going to Italy, meeting a girl and falling in love. Then you kind of skip forward a timeline and you meet a new character, Lena, who is also in Italy and then goes to work in a sanatorium. And then you flip forward again and go back to Anton's perspective as he visits this sanatorium in Italy before the Second World War, and secrets emerge, and I expect there was some sort of love story here and sort of flitting between the timelines. So yeah, it sounds quite intriguing. To be honest, I didn't even read the blurb before I knew I wanted to read this, just because it was by Sebastian Faulks and I loved Birdsong so much. So yeah, so that one's coming out on the 2nd. I'm very much looking forward to getting stuck into that. The next one I want to talk to you about is Empire of the Vampire by Kristoff. Now this is a pretty anticipated release because I think it was supposed to come out last year or the beginning of this year, and it got bumped back. I have never read any Kristoff, but obviously he's a very famous fantasy author, and he wrote the Illuminae files with another author, various other bits and pieces. But this book is due to be released on the 7th of September, if I didn't already say that. And it follows a man who is a silver saint, which effectively I think is like an arm of the church that tries to fight against vampires. They effectively lose the war. Vampires take over, and there's been 27 years without a sunrise, without a dawn. So you've got humans versus vampires. The humans are effectively living in hiding or are enslaved, and then you have this main central character who is trying to fight back and try to obviously regain the world for humanity by finding the Holy Grail. So this is the first in a series, so I don't know how many it's going to be, but it sounds really interesting. Adult fantasy, so I would love to give that one a go as well. The next one is one that I have already pre-ordered. I pre-ordered it quite a while ago, and that's Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. So earlier this year I read The House in the Cerulean Sea. I know a lot of people have read it and absolutely loved it, and I was one of those. It was just really nice to read a story that was well fleshed out, had good character development, but gave you a warm fuzzy feeling at the end instead of the character dying and you being utterly distraught. So I believe Under the Whispering Door has similar vibes, sort of like cozy, wholesome story. And This one will be released on the 21st of September and follows a man who's worked his whole life in an office, hasn't really lived his life because he's just been working the whole time. Can't we all relate to that? And then he dies and he can't quite believe that he's died. And an undertaker's like, nah, you know, you want to crack on and move on. And he ends up going to a cafe, which is sort of like a passing between life and death. And the characters that he meets there show him that he should be living his life, not just working and, I suppose, answering to the man. So he then tries to live a whole life of experiences and memories in this 7 days that he has in this in-between world between life and death. And it just sounds fantastic. And the character sounds a lot like Linus from the Cerulean Sea, and I loved that character so much. So yeah, so very much anticipating that one, and we'll be picking that up pretty much the minute it drops onto my doorstep. Hello, Editing Gemma here. Just a huge apology for my dog in the background. Just a bit of background information. He has fractured his foot, so he's not allowed to go out for long walks anymore. For a dog that usually has 2 hours a day, he needs to amuse himself by scrubbing at the covers on the bed. And clearly I am now immune to it because I didn't even notice that he was doing it while I was filming. So sorry about the background noise. The next one I want to talk to you about is actually non-fiction. It's a memoir by Qian Julie Wang. Apologies if I have absolutely slaughtered the pronunciation of that name. But her book, Beautiful Country, will be released on the 30th of September. I've absolutely been loving memoirs over the last 12, 18 months. I'd never really read them before, but now I'm really into them. And this one follows Qian's journey, I suppose, as her parents moved to the United States from China, but they were effectively illegal, undocumented immigrants. And the title Beautiful Country is the translation for America in Chinese. So in Chinese, America is Beautiful Country. So that's sort of where that came from. But obviously they come to America and it's not quite the beautiful country that they anticipated. And it's about how their parents, who have gone from having pretty stable, good jobs in China, come over to America and they're working in sweatshops, and how Qian, as a young child, doesn't speak much English and is a bit ostracised, or very ostracised, in school because of that. So she struggles to make friends and the teachers don't really help her, and she finds solace in libraries and teaching herself to read English and her growing up. So it's a coming of age story, and taking into account obviously the immigrant experience for a Chinese child. So that sounds really, really riveting and probably going to be quite heartbreaking in places. But I'd absolutely like to pick that one up when it comes out at the end of September. So moving on to October releases. And first up, we have The Keepers of Metsan Valo. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. But this one is coming out on the 5th of October by Wendy, Webb. And this is a sort of Nordic folklore inspired magical realism mystery type story. All of those things sound interesting to me. And it's about a girl whose grandmother dies, and it sort of brings lots of family members out of the woodwork, and there is a mystery involved. I think there's some sort of drama or accident or something that causes them to start looking into things a bit deeper. And from what I can gather, all the fairy tales and stories that her grandmother used to tell her when she was a child aren't entirely fictional. So yeah, so very interested to pick that one up and see how Wendy Webb sort of ties the folklore and the mystery elements together. Sounds really intriguing. Never read anything by this author before, so literally just picked it up based on the synopsis. So yeah, absolutely would like to do that one at the beginning of October. Next on my list is The Movement by Petra Hulova. This is coming out on the 7th of October and is a translation from the Czech. So this one looks at a dystopian world where women demand to be recognised for their inner qualities rather than their outer qualities. And when men don't do that, they're sent to re-education centres. Sounds like a pretty cool world to be fair. But in this story we follow one of the guards at the re-education centres as she sort of talks us through the history of how they got to that point, what's going on in her life, and I expect there will be a plot arc that sort of takes us forward in the story as well. But it sounded like a really interesting concept. I haven't read any Czech literature before, so I would very much like to give that one a go when it comes out in October. The next one up is one that's had quite a lot of hype. I've seen it on quite a lot of other channels who have filmed similar videos, and that is Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kuznair, and that is due to come out on the 28th of October, and it's a gothic retelling of the Nutcracker. So I mean, just that strapline alone was like, yeah, tick, want that one. And we follow a young girl, I think in Nottingham, who wants to be a ballerina, but her parents want her to get married and have children. And then a mysterious toy maker moves in to their street, and some magic occurs in which she is then transported to this other snowy land, and she has to find out a way to get back home. It sounds magical and snowy and perfect for November, basically, for a November read. Obviously it comes out at the end of October, so yeah, so very much looking forward to giving that one a go. I think I've said that for every single one of these books, but obviously if I'm anticipating them, I am looking forward to giving them a go. So yeah, so that one is the end of October, and I'm looking forward to picking that up. So next we move into November, and first up on my anticipated releases for November is The Swift and the Harrier by Minette Walters, which is coming out on the 4th of November. Minette Walters has written various historical fiction books. I do actually own a couple, but haven't got to them yet. But this one follows two people. Jane Swift, who is a physician. This is based in the 1600s, during civil war between King and Parliament, and Jane is neutral. She doesn't take sides. She tends to the injured for both sides of the war. She then comes across a man, Mr. Harrier, and he is all for the war. He thinks it needs to happen so that they can move on. They should be enemies, but I don't think they are. And I think it goes sort of from there, where they've got different agendas. So there's conflict and loss and grief. And I think ultimately it is a love story. So yeah, I love myself a bit of historical fiction, and sort of the Civil War in the 1600s isn't something that I've read much of, if any. So a great backdrop for a good story. Then on the 11th of November, we have All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody and Christine Lynn Herman. This one has very much got Hunger Games vibes. I absolutely loved the Hunger Games. I also loved Red Rising, which is a sort of Hunger Games in space type scenario. And yeah, so I'm quite interested to give this one a whirl. So it says it's Hunger Games, but from the perspective of the villains. But from what I can gather, we're in a fantastical world where there is magic, etc., etc. And every generation, one of that generation are chosen to be the champion for 7. There's 7 like key families, so one of each are chosen, and then they have a fight to the death, effectively. And then the winner controls the magic supply for the city, or something along those lines. So for generations and generations, the same family has won every time, but this tournament is different for some reason or other. So there's opportunity here for one of the other families to get in and get some power. So yeah, and I think this might be a series also. Having a little nose on Goodreads, it said number 1 in brackets, which suggests there will be a number 2. So yeah, so we will see what that one is like. Intrigued. And the last one I'm going to talk about today is the Memory Box by Catherine Hughes. This is also coming out on the 11th of November, and it's an author that I've read before. So I read The Secret by Catherine Hughes quite a few years ago now, but I really liked the intricacy of her plot and the way she wove bits in at the beginning, then pulled together at the end, and it was just a lovely story, really. So I'm hoping for much more of the same, and from the premise it sounds like it will be. You have a woman who, you start with her perspective, she opens a memory box. There's a handful of things in this box, including a newspaper cutting that she has never read and will never read, and we don't really know why. And then something happens to force her back to Italy, where she'd obviously spent some time in her past, to confront the ghosts of whatever I suppose is in that newspaper clipping. So yeah, a bit light on the synopsis, so I don't know too much about it, but I don't like to know a huge amount before I go into my books anyway. But I mean, a box of memories that obviously we're going to find out what those memories relate to. Yes, like that. Set in Italy. Yes, like that. Written by Catherine Hughes. Yes, like that. So that is why that one is also one of my anticipated releases for the rest of this year. So that, my loves, is that. So those are 10 books that I am looking forward to. Like I say, if you know of any more that you think would be of interest, or books that you are interested in coming out between now and Christmas, then please let me know in the comments below. Thank you all very much for coming and watching, and a big shout out to my subscribers. As of today, there are 43 of you. So thank you very much. If you like this video, obviously you could add to my 43, or just give me a like, or drop a comment. And yeah, I will see you again soon for another video. Okay, cheers guys, bye.